To ask questions. You may have something that you are not sure of, but you would like to speak up. The microphone is over there. Please feel free to ask anything. Ask anything.
This is a cultural thing. Nobody likes to be first. In America, everyone would be fighting each other to be first to the microphone because everybody wants to have a chance to get on stage and have a say. But if somebody will be brave enough to be the first one, believe me, there will be people who come second and third and go after that. Surely after a talk like I just gave, somebody must have a question. Yes.
Good evening. Thanks. I think what we've listened to for the past hour is really amazing stuff. None of us would have imagined such proof put in such a scientific manner so that all of us can understand it. But there is one aspect which I'm not quite sure about. The part where you mentioned about the omniscient part. How, if, as far as I know, omniscient should mean that all-knowing, right? Having all knowledge?
Yes.
Alright. So, from your explanations, the photons are just transmitters of the knowledge. So, I mean, transmitters and knowing aren't they different things?
Well, I did mention that I said that they both store and transmit. So the information is actually stored by the photons of energy. It is the photons maintaining the energy, the energy shell or the electron shell at a higher stage than the resting state that allows the information to be held. Possibly somewhat like computers use a binary system, although we don't know for sure about that. But to go a bit further, I mean, these ideas get taken a lot further than this. If I were to ask most people what they think with, they would say they think with their brain. But their brain is actually matter. You know, subatomic particles into atoms, into molecules, and into neurons. But these neurons themselves do not think. It is actually the complex dynamic of the exchange of photons that takes place that is actually the thought process. The thought process actually is not a process of physical matter. It is a process of light energy, which is outside of space and time. So our thought processes actually exist outside of space and time through light energy.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Cheers up.
Walaikum salam.
Okay, just now you mentioned about the photon pocket of electromagnetic waves as being omnipresent, being everywhere at the same time. So are you implying that in this known universe there is only one photon packet of light energy existing?
Well, this is a brilliant young man. I didn't say that at all, but I have said that before. That one of the possibilities is that there is only one photon. And that is the reason that the photon appears in reality is everywhere at once. See, because as I was saying before, there is nowhere else to be. Distance only exists in the physical world. But we know there is a non-physical existence. And the non-physical existence does not have distance as one of its characteristics. So it has no size. So in the non-physical existence, there is only one place to be, and that is at the place of existence. And there's nowhere else to go. And so it only would really take one photon to be experienced everywhere to make up the totality of all the things that we see photons doing. And to let us measure, I mean, if we measure them, we can with devices measure millions of them hitting every second. But every one of them is actually omnipresent. And so therefore, then we get into the complexity of how do we observe an absolute world that doesn't have space, time, or matter, from mechanisms and thinking and a conceptual system and a language that is all based on space, time, and matter. So we are obviously looking at something that is different than the reality that we see. And then we do see this when we do experiments with both, let's say, electrons and photons, that both electrons and photons can show a wave nature and a particle nature. Well, obviously, in our world, something cannot be a particle and a wave at the same time. So what it appears to be is, depending on what we look for when we look at, say, for instance, a photon, the means that we use to look determines what we will see. So that the photon itself has no absolute existence in the relative world. It is something other than anything we can conceive. So the point that you realized was one of the possible implications of what I say. I don't want you to go away from here saying, I said there's only one photon in the world. But one of the possible implications of photons being omnipresent is that in reality there is only one. Somebody else back there was getting up to ask a question? Yeah. Walaikum salam.
I'm on the representative for two of my friends that were too shy to come right now.
Okay.
So,
Great.
Here's one of the questions. One of the questions was that if light is omnipresent, then how come it is that in space there are places where light does not exist? For example, such as black holes or antineutrinos or stuff like that. Another question would be, of all the religions that you could have chosen, why did you choose Islam? Because even in the Bible, correct me if I'm wrong, it says, and then there was light.
Okay. First question. I don't know of anywhere where there are not photons. You mentioned the black holes. It's not that there's no photons in black holes. It's that photons can't get past the Schwarzschild radius, which is the limit of how far electromagnetic radiation can get off the surface of a black hole. Because the gravity is so great, it actually bends space around it. So there are photons there, but instead of going like this out into space, they start to go out, and the gravity is curving the space around the black hole, so they go out and they immediately come back down. And that is why it is a black hole, not because there are no photons of light, but because the photons of light cannot escape from being inside the Schwarzschild radius. So, and out in space, where we say empty space, there's no such thing as empty space. You did mention the word neutrinos. Every cubic centimeter, even out in the emptiest space, like between galaxies, where there's only one hydrogen atom on the approximately in every cubic meter, I think, one hydrogen atom worth of matter. Every cubic centimeter out there, every second has approximately 70,000 neutrinos going through it. And although neutrinos are not technically spoken of as electromagnetic radiation, if it is true that a neutrino has no mass, one of the theories about missing matter in the universe is that it is neutrinos. They have some tiny amount of mass, but so tiny that we can't recognize it. But I think Einstein's special theory